They didn't even wait until he sat down. Dante Miller walked into the cafeteria and heard it before he saw it. Laughter, dozens of flyers taped to walls, lockers, even his chair. His face photoshopped, mouth open mid-sentence. Caption, missing self-respect. Some kids pretended not to notice. Others took pictures. One whispered loud enough, "Why is he still showing up like he's relevant?" Then came the tray, knocked clean off his hands. Milk, fries, paper scattered. A voice said, "Oops, didn't see you down there." He didn't scream, didn't cry. He picked up a single flyer, folded it, pocketed it, and walked. Straight to the library, logged in, opened a folder called They Think I'm Not Watching, and added another name to the list. We all knew a Dante, or we were him, or we stayed quiet when it happened. But what if the kid who never spoke was just busy collecting proof? Tag someone who thinks silence means weakness. Let them read this twice. Dante Miller walked into Jefferson High the same way he always did. Head level, pace steady, never in a rush, never dragging. He didn't dress to impress or pretend not to care. He wore what he had, and he wore it with intention, a gray hoodie with the cuffs worn thin, black jeans, and sneakers that were more tape than rubber at this point. Kids noticed. That was the point. He moved like someone who'd done the math and knew the risks, like he was choosing to show up anyway. And that choice, more than anything, is what set them off. No one could remember when the bullying actually started. It wasn't one big moment. It was layered like rust, the kind of thing that grows until no one even questions it anymore. First came the jokes about his shoes, then the hair, then his voice, then the way he never spoke up unless he had to. He was just too quiet for their comfort. In the hallways, the taunts were almost lazy now. "Yo, Dante, that hoodie ever take a break? Somebody tell bro it's not the Great Depression anymore." They were casual with it, performed for each other more than for him. Dante never gave them what they wanted. No flinching, no pushback, no asking teachers for help. They called it weakness, said he let people walk on him. But that's because they didn't understand what choosing not to react really means. Second period, Ms. Avery's class. History. Loud. Too many kids. Not enough desks. Dante sat in the back, not because he wanted to hide, but because it gave him the best vantage point. You could see everything from back there. He never looked down when they whispered. He just kept his eyes on the board and wrote faster than the teacher could talk. No laptop, just a lined notebook and a ballpoint pen with no cap. One day, a girl leaned back in her seat, handed him a crumpled, sticky note. Her handwriting was messy, but clear. "Do you ever smile?" He read it, folded it twice, slipped it into his book, didn't write back. Next week, her friend called him Emotionless Miller loud enough for the class to hear. Kids laughed. Even Ms. Avery chuckled. He didn't flinch. Lunchtime was the battlefield. He always sat alone. Not because no one asked him to join, a few kids had, but because every time he did, someone showed up to ruin it. One time, he sat with two freshman boys who talked anime and coding. Next day, someone slipped a note in their locker. Dante's recruiting for the Lame Alliance. Say no while you can. They stopped sitting with him after that. Never made eye contact again. Dante didn't hold it against them. He understood what social survival costs. He sat back at the edge of the cafeteria, headphones in, tray untouched, watching. The notebook was always with him. Worn brown leather cover, ink stains on the edge. Inside, pages and pages of numbers, timestamps, quotes, diagrams. He tracked things no one else did. How long it took security to respond when a white student reported bullying for minutes average. How long when he did, not once in 8 reports. Names of teachers who didn't see anything, what was posted on public accounts versus private ones. Who laughed, who filmed, who stayed quiet. It wasn't paranoia. It was data. He wasn't angry. He was accurate. After school, Dante didn't go home right away. He worked in the library part-time, cataloging, fixing printer jams, resetting frozen Chromebooks. Most kids didn't even know students could do that, but he had applied early in freshman year and quietly become the only student with admin login credentials to the school's outdated system. He never abused it, but he never forgot he had it. He'd finish reshelving books, then stay an extra hour doing homework. Except his screen didn't show Canvas or class slides. It showed file trees, screenshot folders, date-stamped reports, hidden folders inside folders, each labeled with initials, each one building. He wasn't just collecting bullying incidents. He was collecting proof of how deep it went, not just the students who mocked him, but the teachers who pretended they didn't see, the staff who couldn't verify, the administrators who said, "We're looking into it," and then forgot his name a week later. But the cracks were starting to show. Not in Dante. In them. A sophomore who once made a TikTok mocking Dante's speech got pulled from the student council. No explanation. A football player who tripped Dante in the hall was benched during homecoming. Coach said school conduct issues. One of the girls who ran the Burner Meme account had to go private overnight after her post history leaked to someone's parents. None of it pointed to Dante. He hadn't posted anything. He hadn't made a scene. But people started feeling watched. That's when the whispers changed tone. Bro's weird, but like he knows stuff. He'd just be looking at you and you feel guilty. Low-key, I think he's tracking people. For real. One teacher, the only one who treated Dante with basic respect, said to him after class, "They think you're invisible. But I think you're the only one really paying attention." Dante looked at her deadpan. "They see what I wear. I see what they erase." Then he left. At home, his bedroom was simple. Bed, desk, lamp, router with wires everywhere. He didn't play video games. He didn't post photos. But taped on the wall above his desk was a single printed quote, one he'd typed out himself. They don't get to say it wasn't real just because they weren't listening. Every day he woke up, read it once, and added another line to his records. The person they thought they could break? He was already building the ground they'd fall through. Dante didn't have enemies. Enemies are people who admit you're a threat. He had dismissers, the ones who saw him and decided instantly irrelevant, unremarkable, ignorable. And that's exactly how the school handled him. The school wasn't cruel. It was polite, professional, smiling through its rot. The first time he reported something, it was sophomore year. Someone had drawn a noose on his locker with the words, "Extra credit for hanging around." He took a photo, brought it to the vice principal. Mr. Aldridge looked at the picture, sighed like it inconvenienced him, and said, "Let's not jump to conclusions, Dante. That could have been about anything." Dante said nothing, just placed the photo on his desk and walked out. No one followed up. The second time, a group chat leaked, a thread titled Dante Memes. 17 students. Photos taken without his consent, one where he's sneezing, one where he's walking alone, one cropped to make his hoodie look like a dress. Someone tagged him. He screenshotted the whole thread. He emailed it to the school counselor along with the student handbook policy on bullying and privacy. 2 weeks later, the counselor responded, "Thank you for sharing this. We're handling it internally. Unfortunately, due to student privacy, we cannot share outcomes." When Dante asked if the posts had been taken down, she said, "Most of the students involved didn't mean harm. It seems like a case of misinterpreted humor." He asked if she had read the captions. She hadn't. The system didn't attack him. It just buried him under silence. He started testing it. Small things. He once forwarded a fake tip that a student was being mocked for their stutter, no names, no context, just a vague report. The next day, the entire fourth period class got a speech from admin about language sensitivity. But when he was called Ghetto Google in class, the teacher said, "Let's not waste time on drama, people." He started tracking the patterns. Emails sent, replies received, who was CC'd, how long it took to respond to him versus others, which rules were enforced, who got called to the office, who never did. The data wasn't dramatic, just consistent. He built a chart titled, "Who's Worth Protecting Here?" And under his name, the system wrote, "Low Priority." He understood the game now. The school didn't want to solve the problem. It wanted to avoid headlines. He realized They wouldn't act unless someone made them afraid not to. He began accessing public records, suspension logs, board meeting notes, school policy PDFs. He cross-checked them with what he saw, and he found something. In the last 5 years, the school had never once documented a bullying case involving racial language, despite multiple students of color dropping out or transferring. He printed that, put it in a folder, labeled it Impossible Math. But Dante wasn't interested in just collecting receipts anymore. He wanted proof that the system was built to fail people like him. He found it in the school's digital monitoring platform, the one used to flag student behavior and track disciplinary issues. He requested his full behavior record from the school. He'd never had detention, never been suspended, barely spoke in class, and yet his report included 6 notes from teachers saying he was emotionally distant, non-participatory, and unapproachable. Another note from a lunch staff member read, "Student has poor hygiene, maybe a sign of neglect at home." He showered every morning, washed his clothes twice a week, carried deodorant in his bag. That's when he understood. They didn't write about him. They wrote about the version of him they had already decided was true. And that version didn't get defended. He began taking screenshots of his own file, not to challenge it, but to preserve it exactly as it was. He wasn't going to change their words. He was going to let them speak for themselves. He started meeting with a local education equity advocate off campus on weekends, shared documents, showed data, asked about legal options. The advocate didn't say much during their first meeting. She just looked at him and said, "You've built a stronger case than half the lawyers I know." Dante said, "I'm not trying to sue." She nodded. "So, what are you trying to do?" He looked at her dead in the eye and said, "Make sure nobody can say they didn't know." Inside the school, nothing changed. The jokes continued. The silence stayed louder than the abuse. But slowly, Dante stopped writing things down in his notebook. He didn't need to anymore, because everything that needed to be said had already been recorded. The flyers were bad. The memes were worse. But this was the one that changed everything. It happened on a Thursday, just before midterms. The air in the halls was sharp with stress, and Dante was already used to hearing people mutter as he passed. He'd just finished tutoring a kid from freshman algebra, a quiet girl named Maya who always sat in the back and never raised her hand. She stayed behind after class and asked Dante if he could explain something. He did. Patient, clear, not rushing. She smiled when she left, the first real smile he'd seen that week. That made what happened next even worse. At 2:17 p.m., a group chat titled Dumb TE Watch lit up with new uploads. Somebody had broken into Dante's locker, took photos of his notebook, his hoodie, a pack of lunch tokens, even an old letter he kept from his grandmother, folded up and yellowing at the edges. They posted a photo of that letter and circled the phrase, "Proud of you, no matter what the world says." Then someone typed, "Y'all, Grandma out here manifesting failure, loudly crying face, loudly crying face, loudly crying face." Others added edits, GIFs, clown emojis. The letter became a meme. The whole thread racked up 3,000 views before the final post landed. A picture of his house, taken from across the street. Caption, "Field trip to the King's Castle?" When Dante opened the thread after school, he stared at it for 2 full minutes. No blinking, no scrolling, just watching. He closed his phone, packed his bag slowly, and walked out. That night, he didn't go straight home. He walked 3 blocks past the bus stop and knocked on a door with a green sticker on the frame. It belonged to Ms. Yara, the education advocate he'd met before. She opened the door, took one look at his face, and stepped aside. No questions. He sat down, opened his bag, pulled out a flash drive, and said, "It's time." The next morning, he didn't show up for homeroom. Instead, he went straight to the main office. Calm, hoodie zipped, bag tight against his back. He asked to see the principal. They told him to wait. He didn't. He walked past the desk and opened the office door himself. Inside, Principal Harding was sipping coffee and reading something on her iPad. She looked up annoyed. "Dante, I?" He dropped a folder on her desk. Inside, Screenshots of the group chat. GPS data proving when and where the house photo was taken. Photos of the broken locker. The original grandmother letter with his name on it. A list of every time he reported an incident with no follow-up. A printed copy of the student handbook's bullying policy. A highlighted line. Any form of harassment involving family or home life will result in immediate administrative action. He didn't raise his voice, didn't cry, didn't pause. He just said, "You're going to want to reopen every report I've ever filed." Then he added, even quieter, "And if this gets buried, the school board gets all of it next, with names, including yours." That same day, first students were pulled from class and sent home. Parents called in. Phones were confiscated. The chat disappeared. But Dante had already archived it to an encrypted drive. He didn't want an apology. He wanted a record. 2 teachers who had ignored his previous complaints were placed under review. One tried to defend herself. "I just thought it was kids being kids." Dante responded, "Do kids being kids usually know my address?" She didn't answer. At lunch, he sat at his usual table. No one said anything. People still looked, but now no one laughed. Someone left a note on his table that said, "Sorry for watching and not doing anything." He folded it, put it in his pocket, didn't look up. Ms. Yara filed an official Title VI complaint on his behalf. The investigation began within the week. The school had 30 days to respond. By the end of the month, 6 students were suspended. 2 were expelled. 1 had their college recommendation pulled. A teacher was reassigned. And the principal? She announced her early retirement the day after receiving a certified envelope with Dante's name on the return label. This was no longer about bullying. This was about what happens when the quiet one draws a line and dares the system to step over it. No one saw him for weeks. After the investigation kicked off, Dante stopped showing up to school every day. Some said he transferred. Others said he dropped out. A rumor even floated around that he'd had a breakdown. None of them were true. Dante was working. Quietly, legally, intentionally. He'd been invited to meet with the district's Equity and Compliance Office. Twice. Then a third time, this time not just as a complainant, but as a consultant. Someone in that office had seen what he submitted and asked one question. How the hell did a kid collect this much evidence this clean? He didn't say much in those meetings, just showed them what had been happening, not just to him, but to others. Screenshots, witness statements, copies of messages he wasn't even included in, proof that he wasn't the only one, just the one who didn't give up. He showed them inconsistencies in how incidents were reported, how certain students were labeled disruptive, while others were called high energy. He mapped how often students of color were punished for the same behaviors white students were counseled through. He didn't frame it as revenge. He framed it as a system analysis. By the end of the second meeting, the compliance officer looked at him and said, "You realize you're operating at a level most adults can't manage, right?" Dante said nothing, just nodded once. The district invited him to present his findings at a roundtable for student equity leaders. Not at his school, at the regional board office. Formal setting, glass walls, suits and ties. Dante showed up in a button-up shirt his aunt ironed for him that morning. No flashy sneakers, no hoodie, just his notebook, his data, and the receipts. He didn't speak to impress. He just told the truth. He opened with this. If I spoke up the way they did, I was called aggressive. If I didn't speak, I was called distant. If I stood up for myself, I was warned. If I stayed quiet, I was forgotten. That's not a school problem. That's design. No one interrupted. At the end of the roundtable, a rep from the district office approached him and asked if he'd consider serving as a student advisor for upcoming policy reforms. He didn't answer right away. He just asked, "Would I have access to their discipline algorithms?" The rep blinked. Yes, you would." Dante smiled. Just a little. Then yeah, I'm in. Back at school, his name started spreading again. But this time not with laughs. With questions. "Did you hear he's working with the district now?" Bros, basically running ops behind the curtain. Is it true he got Harding fired? I think he's in meetings with the state now. The bullies? Quiet. The bystanders? Quieter. And then came the day no one expected. It was an all-staff training day. No students on campus. Teachers in folding chairs. Admins buzzing around with clipboards and coffee cups. They were told to report to the auditorium for a special equity session led by an outside consultant. No one paid attention to the wording. The lights dimmed. A few staff joked in the back. Someone asked, "Are we doing another video about microaggressions?" Then the presenter walked on stage. Button-up shirt. Black notebook. No introduction needed. The room fell still. Dante stepped up to the mic and opened his notes. Some of you don't remember me. That's okay. Some of you do, but not for the reasons you should. My name is Dante Miller. I was your student, and now I'm your audit. You could hear the breath get knocked out of half the room. He didn't yell. He didn't name names. He just showed the receipts. How many of them had logged false behavior comments? How many referrals they'd written for tone with no context? How often teachers escalated minor classroom issues only when the student looked like him? He read direct quotes. He showed anonymized reports. He dropped facts, not insults. And the final slide was a single sentence. Accountability is not an attack. It's what happens when silence fails. He closed his notebook and walked off the stage. No applause. No claps. Just faces frozen in place. By the following week, 3 teachers had been formally reprimanded. 2 were reassigned. 1 left voluntarily. And Dante was asked to join a policy review panel for the state education department. The door they never expected him to walk through, he built that door himself, then walked through it holding a clipboard and a list of names. And they couldn't look away. His name was Trent Sayer, varsity soccer captain. Dean's list, letter of recommendation from 3 staff members, always smiled in group photos. Teachers loved him. Parents trusted him. School board sent him to speak at youth leadership events. But Dante knew exactly who he was. Sayer had been the ringleader. The first one to say, "You don't even dress like you belong here." The one who started the group chat. The one who leaked Dante's address. The one who posted the picture of the letter from Dante's grandma and turned it into a meme. When the investigation began, Sayer deleted everything. Denied it all. Claimed he had no idea it had gone that far. Told his parents he was being framed by someone with a grudge. For a while, it looked like he'd get away with it. Until the district pulled metadata. Until the screenshots came with timestamps. Until his school email was traced to the uploads. The system couldn't protect him anymore. Dante didn't ask to confront him. The district scheduled it. It was part of a formal restorative justice option, and they asked Dante if he'd sit down with Sayer and 2 mediators just to discuss the harm and potentially find closure. He said yes, but not for closure. He had something else in mind. They met in a small admin office. Neutral walls. Cheap chairs. Sayer walked in with a slight smirk, like he was there for a dentist appointment. Like this was a speed bump, not a reckoning. Dante sat already, back straight, notebook in hand. The mediator introduced the session, explained the process, asked if either party wanted to begin. Dante didn't wait. He opened his notebook and spoke clearly. On November 14th, 2:22 p.m., you posted an image of my grandmother's letter with the caption "Hallmark on hood." Sayer blinked. On December 2nd, you screenshotted a message in our classroom portal where I asked for tutoring help and sent it to 7 others with the caption, "Bro needs Google Translate for algebra." The mediator raised a hand, gently. "Dante, maybe we—" He kept going. On January 18th, you uploaded a blurred photo of my home and wrote, "Someone tell Zillow to shut this place down." Sayer opened his mouth. Dante didn't stop. You deleted the images, but not the footprint. The server logged your IP. The uploads came from your school device. We have 6 confirmations from the district tech team. And you know what's wild? I didn't even include all of that in the original complaint. Sayer shifted in his chair. The smirk was gone. You thought this was about getting back at you. It's not. This is about what people like you think they can do to people like me and walk away. You've worn a uniform with my name in your mouth for 2 years. You built your jokes around me like I was some open source character. You don't need to say sorry. You need to sit in what you did and understand you only got this far because no one ever stopped you before. Silence. Then Dante opened a folder and slid a printed sheet across the table. Sayer picked it up with shaky hands. It was the college disciplinary notification from the university that had accepted him. The same university Dante had submitted a formal report to with receipts. The offer was rescinded. Trent Sayer wasn't going anywhere in the fall. Dante stood up. You don't get to rebuild your image until you rebuild what you broke. I won't be in a room when you do that. Then he walked out. Calm. Finished. Unbothered. Outside, he didn't smile. He didn't even breathe different. Just walked to the sidewalk, pulled out his phone, and typed a line in his notes app. Spoken. Not shouted. Then he turned the screen off. By the end of the week, word had gotten around. The golden boy had fallen. Not because Dante exposed him, but because he exposed himself, and Dante simply held up the mirror. People started whispering again, but this time about their own past behavior. Some posted apologies. Others deleted old posts. A few transferred schools altogether. Dante didn't respond to any of it. He wasn't interested in apologies. He was building something else now. It started with a whisper. A freshman girl walked into the guidance office and asked, "Can I report something that happened last year?" She didn't mention Dante's name. She didn't have to. Within 3 days, 5 more students came forward, none of them related to Dante's case. Different bullies, different teachers, same patterns. They called me Hood because I wore braids. My name got turned into a nickname in class, and nobody stopped it. They said I talked too ghetto to be on student council. My science partner told me I was only in AP Bio for diversity stats. None of them had ever filed a complaint before. Not because nothing happened, because they were trained silently over time to believe nothing would change. But now, they'd seen what happened when someone didn't stay quiet. The district's equity team opened a full inquiry into Jefferson High's internal conduct records. What they found wasn't shocking to Dante, it was just confirmation. For 5 years, the school had 0 formal bullying cases logged that included racial bias, 2 dozen informal notes labeled student conflict, but no action, multiple parent complaints flagged as resolved despite no follow-up. The paper trail wasn't missing. It had been deliberately flattened. Every entry was a memo with no teeth. Notes like, student claims they feel isolated, referred to peer group. Parent believes child is being targeted. Encouraged self-advocacy. No further incident observed. Closed. It was all there, just buried. Then came the teachers. It started small. A math teacher who quietly emailed the equity office and asked to review her own past student comments. Then a history teacher who admitted he'd laughed along with students once during a nickname joke and felt sick ever since. Then, unexpectedly, Ms. Avery, the teacher who had once written that Dante was emotionally distant, walked into the office and said, "I think I failed a kid. I want to know what it would take to make that right." Some called it self-preservation, but others were genuinely cracking. Years of silent complicity had left guilt to rot behind their eyes. Now, Dante's presence wasn't just making people nervous. It was making them reckon. At the next school board meeting, 2 former students, both black, both now in college, returned to speak during public comment. One read her 8th grade disciplinary record, which labeled her loud, disruptive, overreactive. She followed it with her college recommendation letter, which described her as assertive, driven, and unshakable. The only thing that changed was the zip code, she said. The other recalled being denied the chance to join student government because his GPA was on the line. They let a kid who plagiarized a speech run instead of me. The room stayed silent. The board took notes. No one looked up, but everyone heard it. By the end of the month, 23 student reports were reopened. 4 faculty members were put on leave. 1 administrator resigned for personal reasons, and the district released a public statement acknowledging systemic failures in bias response protocols. They didn't name Dante. They didn't have to. Everyone knew who had lit the match. And Dante? He didn't attend the meetings. Didn't post a thing. Didn't tell anyone I told you so. He just kept showing up to school. Same hoodie, same pace, same silence. But now, when he walked the halls, teachers looked up. Staff nodded. Students moved out of the way. Not out of fear, out of recognition. And in the corner of the main hallway bulletin board, under a hand-lettered sign that read "Voices Matter," someone had pinned up a copy of his quote. "I was never quiet. You just weren't listening." No one took it down. The system hadn't fallen completely, but it couldn't hide behind its policies anymore. Not with that many witnesses, not with that much truth staring back. By spring, Dante Miller had no enemies left. Not because they'd apologized, but because the game had changed. Because he was no longer playing in the system, he was one of the few now shaping it. His role as a student equity advisor wasn't just symbolic anymore. He had been quietly handed access to the district's restorative policy drafts, disciplinary protocol updates, and, most importantly, the proposed language for how schools should define racialized harassment. He read every line, crossed out fluff, highlighted loopholes, and when asked for input, he didn't suggest, he corrected, "This part still gives the school the power to ignore it. This wording is too soft, they'll interpret it as optional. This line protects feelings, not students." He was 17, and they were listening, but he hadn't forgotten the silence. The students who'd stayed quiet while he got humiliated, the teachers who watched and smiled, the counselors who called his notebook concerning, the administrators who said, "Don't make this bigger than it is." So, when the district offered him the chance to speak at the leadership summit, Dante declined. He had something else in mind. He requested permission instead to submit a policy proposal. Not a speech, not a story. A motion. Formal, quiet, permanent. It was titled, "On the Documentation and Classification of Racialized Peer Harassment in Secondary Institutions." 12 pages, 0 emotion, all receipts. It proposed that any complaint involving race, culture, or identity cannot be dismissed without formal review, that any staff member who fails to report an observed incident will be named in the student's file, that all disciplinary referrals must include student and teacher demographic breakdowns, and that these logs be published quarterly. It ended with a quote, 1 line, no name. "Accountability isn't revenge. It's what you owe when the apology's too late." The motion passed, quietly, unanimously. Dante didn't attend the vote. He didn't want the applause. He was in the library, fixing a jammed printer. A few days later, the district emailed him asking what he wanted to do about his own past reports, the ones that had been ignored. They offered him a full revision of his student record, the ability to clear any false character notes, even write a personal statement to attach for future colleges. He replied with 1 sentence, "Leave them in. I want the next person to see what got missed." He sat with that decision, not out of pride, but clarity. He wasn't here to erase what had happened. He was here to make sure it got documented right this time. And when the new school year began, new staff, new admin, new training programs, they asked if he'd come help onboard the team. He showed up, clipboard in hand, hoodie zipped, headphones around his neck. No big moment. No announcement. He just walked to the front of the room, passed out the training materials, and said, "Let's start with what your job actually is." Someone asked him later why he didn't post more, why he never talked about winning. He looked at them like they missed the whole point. "Justice isn't mine to give," he said, "but today, I'm done waiting for someone else to step in." Then he packed his notebook, nodded once, and walked out. It didn't happen all at once. No banners went up. No one made a movie. There wasn't a school-wide assembly where someone stood up and gave Dante a medal. But it echoed. In conversations. In choices. In what people stopped letting slide. First came the walkouts. A week after Dante's proposal was adopted, a group of sophomores staged a silent protest, not with signs, with tape over their mouths and handwritten notes pinned to their shirts. We saw it too. Silence isn't neutral. He wasn't the first. He better be the last. The principal, a new one, brought in after the early retirement, didn't stop them. She stood at the entrance, nodded once, and opened the front doors herself. Then came the rewrites. Clubs across the district revised their constitutions and applications. Debate teams, student councils, even yearbook committees started adding anti-bias accountability clauses. One student leader put it plainly, "We don't want another Dante Miller situation. We want a system that doesn't require someone like him to burn alone just to get heard." The phrase caught on, not in headlines, in hallways, in meeting rooms, in whispers. Another Dante Miller situation. Not as a compliment, as a warning. Then came the mentorship. Dante didn't announce it, but slowly a few younger students started stopping him after class, asking where to file complaints, what to screenshot, how to word an email so it can't be ignored. He never gave long speeches. He just taught them how to hold the system to its own rules. He showed one freshman how to archive text messages before reporting a harassment case, taught a junior how to cite district policy when requesting an independent hearing, gave a senior his own outline for writing a testimony. One of them, a quiet girl who hadn't spoken much in class all year, said, "I didn't think someone like me could fight back until I saw you weren't asking for permission." He didn't say, "You're welcome." He just handed her a folder and said, "You're going to want to start documenting early." And still, he stayed out of the spotlight. When the district offered to name a scholarship after him, he said no. Put it in someone else's name, someone who spoke up and didn't get heard. When a journalist tried to write a feature on him, he declined the interview. Tell the story, not my brand. Instead, he kept showing up in the background, at a school board meeting, sitting quietly in the back row, at a student rights workshop, passing out flyers, at the library, helping a student fill out a complaint form for the first time. People started to recognize him in places he didn't speak, and they started listening better even when he didn't. And then came the replication. 3 other schools in the district adopted his reporting model. 2 more adjusted their staff training based on the audit he contributed to. One principal from across the state requested a copy of his documentation rubric for peer harassment, not because the state required it, but because his students demanded it. The policy he helped write was included in a district-wide anti-bias toolkit. It had no byline, but every admin who read it knew exactly whose words they were reading. Dante never returned to the auditorium stage. He didn't throw a graduation party. He didn't post a then versus now glow-up photo. He just kept moving, walking the long way to class, sitting in the back, holding the door open when others wouldn't. The system didn't collapse. It cracked, loud enough that people stopped pretending not to hear. And when new students arrived at Jefferson High, nervous, unsure, carrying the weight of being different in a place that didn't always know how to hold it, someone would tell them, "If anything ever happens, there's a way through it now. We didn't always have that. We do, because someone made sure we would." They wouldn't say his name. They didn't have to. The school was quieter now, not in a fearful way, in a way that meant people paused before speaking, like they were finally aware that words could bruise. And in that stillness, people started doing something rare. They looked back. It was after school, late spring. The sun was stretching across the floor of the main hallway, catching the dust in long golden beams. Dante was at his locker, swapping out a notebook, when he heard a voice behind him. Soft, hesitant. "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" He turned. It was Jules Marin, not one of the loudest bullies, not the one who threw food or started the group chat, but she laughed at everything. She was there in every hallway. She forwarded memes. She had said nothing when things got ugly, and everything when people were watching. Now, she stood holding her phone like a shield. Eyes wet, not crying, just honest. "I should have said something. Back then, I knew it was wrong. I knew it went too far. Dante didn't say a word. She stepped closer. Still not too close. I didn't hurt you like some of them did, but I let them think it was okay. I laughed. I shared stuff. I didn't stop anything. Silence stretched. Dante finally spoke. You didn't have to hit me to leave a mark. Jules swallowed hard. Nodded. I know. And I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just needed you to know I know. He looked at her. Not angry. Not warm. Just clear. Then don't waste it. Use it. She nodded again. Didn't say goodbye. Just left. He didn't watch her go. He didn't need to. A week later, she was seen at the library leading a peer training group. No flyers. No social media. Just 6 underclassmen sitting in a circle learning how to file a report. 2 days after that, someone else showed up. Coach Reynolds, the same gym teacher who, 2 years ago, told Dante to toughen up when he was shoved against the locker. He approached during lunch, standing like a shadow near Dante's usual table. Mind if I sit? Dante looked at him, shrugged once. Seats open. Coach Reynolds sat down, hands on the table. No food. I've been thinking about that year, about things I saw and didn't say. I told myself I didn't want to overstep, that it wasn't my role. Dante didn't respond, but the truth is, I didn't want to complicate my own life. I thought if I stayed out of it, I'd be helping keep the peace. But I kept peace for the wrong people. Still, Dante didn't respond. Coach nodded. You don't owe me anything, but I owed you that. He stood. You were braver than me, just so you know. Then he left. Dante sat in silence, then wrote one line in his notebook. People remember who stayed silent longer than who threw the first punch. But the most unexpected reckoning came weeks later. During a spring college visit, a group of Jefferson students were scheduled to tour the campus of a nearby university. Dante went not as part of a school trip, but because the district had asked him to join a youth advisory session there. He sat in the admissions office, waiting for the director to come in. Instead, someone else walked in. Clean haircut, slouched shoulders, fidgeting fingers. Trent Sayer. Dante looked up, stone still. Sayer froze at the door. I didn't know you'd be here. Dante didn't reply, didn't blink. I transferred. After everything. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing now. Still nothing. They wouldn't let me reapply to my old school. The coach wouldn't touch me. Lost the scholarship. Lost most of my friends. He stood awkwardly in front of Dante, shifting his weight. I'm not here to ask for anything. I read the report, your words. I memorized the line about silence not being neutral. I repeat it to myself, because I was the loudest silence in the room. Dante looked up at him, finally spoke. And now you're in a room where nobody laughs at your jokes. Sayer nodded. Yeah. Dante stood, adjusted his bag. Good. You get to learn something I was forced to know early. He didn't say goodbye, didn't shake hands, just walked out. Sayer stayed behind, alone, still, and then came the most surprising reckoning of all. A 9th grader, small, glasses, barely talked in class, stopped Dante in the hallway. I just wanted to say, because of everything you did, I finally feel real, like I'm allowed to exist in this building. Dante didn't know what to say. The kid smiled. Not big, not dramatic, just honest. You made space. I'll use it right. Dante nodded once, and for the first time in a long time, he smiled. The old hallway hadn't changed. Same cracked tile near the vending machines. Same faded murals from a student project 10 years ago. Same drafty window that whistled when the wind blew just right. What had changed was how it felt. When Dante walked through the doors of Jefferson High that day, no one looked at him like a joke. No one looked at him like a threat. They just looked. Aware. Quiet. Still learning how to act around a boy they once ignored, who came back a man carrying proof, not grudges. He wasn't here for attention. He had one thing to do. He walked the long way, past the cafeteria, past the old gym, until he reached room 212, his old English class. The room where he first learned to love silence. Not because it was peaceful, but because it was safer. He peeked inside. A new teacher now. Different posters, but the same corner desk where he used to sit, notebook open, head down, not from shame, but from calculation. He stood there for a moment, then walked away. Next stop, the main office. The secretary looked up. "Can I help you?" He slid a small envelope across the counter. Her eyebrows raised. "It's not a complaint." "Then what is it?" "A return." She opened it after he left. Inside was a school-issued ID. Bent at the edges, faded at the corners. Taped to the back, a yellow sticky note with 5 words written in his tight, clean handwriting. "You don't get to keep me." His last stop was the library, where it had all started. Same dusty computers. Same back table by the window where he used to file screenshots, audio clips, report templates. He walked in, saw the new student age shelving books. She glanced up, startled, recognized him. Wordless awe. He nodded at her, then walked to the back corner and sat. For 5 full minutes he did nothing. Then he opened his notebook, not the old one full of evidence. A new one. Blank pages. Clean cover. He wrote one line. Not for the school. Not for the public. Not for revenge. For him. They tried to erase the presence. Instead, it became the proof that won't go away. He closed the book, stood up, and walked out. No one clapped, no music played. But when he left that day, there was no fear in his steps. No one watching him thought, "What's he doing here?" Now they thought, "How did we not see it sooner?" He didn't stay in town, didn't go to graduation, didn't pose for pictures in front of the school sign. He went forward, and from time to time, someone would ask, "Whatever happened to that kid? The quiet one? Dante?" And someone else would answer, "He's not a story, he's a standard."